Hey everybody, we are back today with Brandy of Brandy Borough Astrology, and we are kind of doing a part one, part two thing this week. This video, we are going to look at the Battle of Fort Sumter, which was the battle in the Civil War that's kicked the Civil War off. And then on Brandy's channel, if you go there, you can watch about the astrology surrounding the January 6th, 2021 insurrection.
The next
and while they're yeah, we probably should laugh at it, it's because she had mentioned wanting to do this, and I'm thinking, okay, so I'm trying to think of something that we can do that's kind of along the same lines, not exactly the same, but similar flavor. So figure we take a look at this here and look at the insurrection on her channel. So definitely go check that out after you watch this or whatever. But just a little bit of backstory about what we're going to be looking at today. I'm going to try to make this kind of brief. I love history. I've got like a boner for history. So I'm going to try to cut this down. I have my little notes. The Battle of Fort Sumter happened. It started on April 12th of 1861 at 4:30 a.m. And this was in Charleston, South Carolina. Now, this only lasted like till 2:30 p.m. the next day. So this was fast. And there really weren't many people that were killed. I think only like maybe 2 people. And I think it was more accidental, if I remember correctly. And essentially, Lincoln wins the election in 1860. After he wins the election, 7 states secede. South Carolina being the first, then Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. The Confederate States of America is created on February 8th of 1861. Then Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina joined. They recognized Kentucky and Missouri, but they were never actually, I guess, legally a part of it, but whatever. And they had, these states had said that they wanted the Union Army, the U.S. Army, out of their different forts and shit in the Confederate States. U.S. didn't want to leave, so the Confederate Army essentially bombarded the Union Army at Fort Sumter, and that's what kicked off the Civil War. Was that pretty good? Was that pretty fast?
I learned a lot.
Cool.
Yes. In a brief amount of time, I learned a lot. That's perfect.
Okay, good. Okay, make sure it was short enough, because seriously, it could go on and on and on.
It's a big discussion, like Civil War.
It is
like days of History Channel documentaries. Yeah,
it is. And what's interesting? Okay, what's also interesting about this? When we look at, I'll go and pull the chart for, like, hold on, I'll show you. Well, maybe I should talk about that later. Okay, stop. I'll stop myself. Whatever. I'll just we'll talk about that later. Okay, so we'll look at the chart for when this kicks off. Is this? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I had it pulled in Placidus earlier like a dumbass. So I had to re-pull the pictures.
Placidus, Reggio, Montana sometimes can be pretty similar, but sometimes different.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So this is when this first kicks off. There are a lot of things that catch attention. I know what
I just want to start with, I think it's so appropriate. Well, not that this happened, but that this happens during Aries season, like the Mars world season. Like, yeah, that makes sense. But looking at this chart, Neptune on the ascendant, which we see Neptune activity with war pretty often.
We do. You know what else is interesting about that Neptune? It's at 29 degrees 56 minutes of Pisces.
Yeah.
Okay. When this battle ends, the next chart we'll see it'll still be at 29 Pisces, but at 4 p.m. on the 13th, on April 13th, it moves into Aries.
Wow.
So we are literally right on the cusp, literally, like the next day. Yeah.
That makes sense. You have, I mean, for kind of the history here, you have an anaretic degree that's very intense, and then it moves into Aries, into zero, which is a very strong degree as well.
Yeah.
That's super interesting. So this is
Yeah.
happening right during the shift.
There's another shift too. I guess as we're talking about this, I'll go ahead and bring up what I was going to bring up before. That Jupiter is retrograde in this chart.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one, I don't believe that it is.
Oh, okay.
And I think it turned retrograde in 1860, in December of 1860, around the time that those first 7 states seceded from the Union, which is also kind of interesting too.
Yeah, it is. And I believe, I'm going from memory, I'm sorry, I'm going to digress off here though. I think Jupiter in Leo would be in the 9th house of the US nations chart. I believe.
We'll pull that. I have that to look at in a little bit, but
Oh,
yeah.
do we? Okay. We'll save that for later.
But yeah.
Yeah. Pluto's interesting, getting ready. It's really on the 2nd house cusp. It's just about 8 minutes away. That's interesting too, getting ready to go into the house of values, money. Really, I think Civil War was mostly over values here. There's many reasons, but
yeah. Yes. And even conjunct, I mean, it's a little wide, but it is still close to the moon as co-ruler. Yeah.
The moon's like, I like how you always describe it like a quartz. It's like it's an amplifier of sorts. So being so close to Pluto there, it's pretty powerful.
It is. Yes. It feels very, and then let's also look at that little Mars Uranus fuck fest down there. Talk about that little fuck fest.
Those guys are teaming up.
Yeah.
You see that a lot in I'm going from memory here. I did a study on this like 4 years ago. I got to find my notes, but you see Mars Uranus activity a lot when like assassinations have happened or presidencies have suddenly ended or and so with the US history, Mars Uranus, anytime there's these significant events, they're doing something.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because I did look up in an ephemeris when the next time that would be.
Ooh, interesting. I'm so curious to hear when that was.
Okay, so I have in my notes, ha 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 ha. The next time, it's not really funny, but it kind of is. The next time Mars and Uranus will be conjunct one another in Gemini, like this, right?
Oh, in Gemini. Okay.
Specifically in Gemini, because Uranus in Gemini does seem to be a trigger for us to be at war historically.
Uranus is in Taurus right now.
Yeah, it's coming up real soon. Like in 3 years, it'll be solidly in Gemini, without doing the retrograde bullshit back and forth. But the next time they'll be conjunct one another in Gemini is on July 3rd and 4th of 2026 at 3 degrees. Now, isn't that interesting? We're talking about July 4th. That's a
significant date.
That's why I've got ha 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 ha.
Yeah. If we make it through the Pluto return, because it keeps retrograding and hitting that, next year will be interesting. If we make it through the Pluto return on the US chart, it'll be interesting to see what happens in 2026.
Yeah.
I find that I'm looking at that 4th house cusp in Gemini with the ruler of Mercury being in in Pisces, pretty much in that 12th house. It's inching, it's just kind of left, but it's pretty much on that cusp. But I mean, this is really foreshadowing how much loss there's going to be, loss of life and just loss in general.
it definitely is. It definitely is.
I did find it interesting though, like we started off talking about, it's his Aries season. Aries is kind of warlike, it's the warrior spirit, but that energy is intercepted in this
It is,
chart.
and it's coming out through that Mars.
Yeah.
With that Uranus right there. And Mars and Gemini, like that could be, I mean, I find that can be a little spastic.
Oh yeah.
Like a little all over, like kind of not knowing what to do with itself almost.
All over the place. Let's try this. Let's change our minds. Let's do this. Let's and that's just Gemini energy. It's not very focused,
Yeah.
Can be, I guess. But no, in this case, especially being right by Uranus, that's a very unpredictable combination going on right there.
It is. It is. And then that eighth house, right, with Scorpio on the cusp, also coming into that Mars. That also feels kind of like while this event there were not many lives lost. Like I said, I think there was just a couple, and I think they were more accidental than
right. But for the war in total.
Yes. Yeah. But for the war in total, like I feel like that also kind of speaks to the death thing as well.
It is interesting that the 10th house is in Sagittarius. I guess this is just really telling the story of states pulling away, trying to make another country. So would that technically be a foreign country or a foreign entity?
Technically, yes. Technically, the Confederate States would have been they weren't recognized by anybody, I don't believe, except for I think Great Britain and France recognized them in some capacity, but they recognized them as belligerents, I think, but they didn't really recognize them as a country. But we definitely, and I guess in some ways we kind of did. Like terrorists in a sense, like domestic terrorists almost.
I'm trying to think of what to make of that Venus, because we have Venus here, technically combust, with the sun. Venus is in a detriment in Aries. I guess this is just, maybe signifying how there's no harmony here within the people, because Venus in Aries is not very harmonious, and you got the planet of harmony here in this sign.
Yeah. And almost like I really do love Aries energy. I think it's fun, but there can be a selfishness to it.
Yes.
There can be it's more self-focused energy, which can at times veer off into selfish. And there is one of the big reasons why they wanted to break away was so they could keep their slaves, and that is selfish. And Venus's values, and among other things. There is
and it's interesting because that was a big topic that probably maybe one of the main reasons I know people argue about. But you got the 6th house where you find topics like slavery and servitude, and you got Saturn here and that Jupiter that we were talking about that's getting ready to possibly station direct or just station. And it's interesting that Saturn right there in the 6th house, indicating that's a big issue.
Yeah, collective issue, especially with Capricorn on the cusp of the 11. Flowing in there like Should we take a look at the chart for when this particular battle ended?
Sure.
Okay, let's see. Hopefully I pull the right one. Let's see if I do. It's this one. Yeah. Okay, so this chart 2:30 p.m. on April 13th of 1861, the Union Army surrenders to the Confederacy. Yeah. We now have the moon has moved into Gemini, has joined up with the fuck fest,
and is magnifying it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. That Saturn on the cusp of the ascendant really kind of anchors this in. I think, this is just indicating this is in for the long. This is not going to be short.
Yeah. It's it's not just this one thing. And
And you're right. Jupiter did station direct.
Yeah. And I am pretty sure I need to check the dates again. And I didn't write them down because I'm dumb. But it wasn't like it was in December of it was like in mid-December of 1860 that it went retrograde. And I think that is around the same time that those 7 states first seceded.
I'm sorry, I'd have to do my math. Judging by the distance between Mercury and the sun, Mercury had to have been retrograde, right? Did it just leave, or is it getting ready to?
Wait, what?
Just judging by the distance between Mercury and the sun, there's either a retrograde that just ended or is getting ready to begin.
That I don't know. That part I don't.
Usually they don't. Yeah, okay. That's a whole other lesson.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I don't. I'd have to look at an ephemeris. That I don't.
Yeah, I'd have to as well. But just kind of it shows something that they either just had gone through. But yeah, that's another thing. The 8th house, though, that Sun and Venus and Neptune now in the 8th house of death and things that are hidden. Of course, this is like the 1800s. There's not the media that we have today.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, to me, it's just like, it's kind of crazy thinking I would think a lot of people would have to be uninformed about
yeah, they probably, they probably, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people today are uninformed, and so it's like, I can imagine this happening. I know it's Mercury retrograde. I have no filter right now, but I can't imagine like just all that 8th house stuff there.
Yeah. Yeah. And, there's something about the sun being in the 8th and then that, Leo on the cusp of the 12th that feels even more like, some people just maybe really not knowing what the fuck's going on.
Yes. I'll tell you, even let's add to that with that South Node and Cancer. That really feels like an energy, like you just go with like what family believes or what.
Yes.
Like what group you're in.
Yeah.
It feels, I mean, I'm kind of diving off here into another thing, but it feels very groupthink.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. It does. Kind of like yeah. I mean, with that moon in Gemini, the moon being maybe just kind of going around with or going along with what is just around you.
Yeah, which would make sense in a time like that when you're just going by newspapers if you could afford them. You're not getting informed. So
yeah. Trying to see if there's anything else that.
Yeah, just maybe Pluto in the 9th, kind of like what we were talking about in the previous chart, this kind of feeling like we got 2 separate countries here, even though it's hard to get those results, but the destruction of one, the building of another kind of thing, or the attempted building anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we look at the one for the US?
I would love that.
Okay.
US chart is just so fascinating when you compare these.
Okay, let me. Is it this one? Is it this one? Okay. So here is the US's chart on the inside. When the Battle of Fort Sumter begins on the outside. Look at that, Uranus. Look at that Uranus return.
Look at that. Like right there.
Yeah.
And I had actually forgotten the US's Mars is in Gemini.
It is.
Yeah, that's
Woo.
Uranus return. That's crazy. And makes sense. You get like a breaking free or trying to not be restricted around times like this. And just unexpected events too.
It definitely, I mean, like even like World War II, it was also, we also had a Uranian return then as well. Which was, before that happened, we had the Pluto opposition. Before this happened, we had the Pluto square. So I am curious to see what happens after this Pluto return, and then we have this Uranian return right after it.
Well, Pluto returns. Most countries do not survive Pluto returns. Most countries only last around 200 years. Pluto returns.
Yeah.
You've had other countries like England where every Pluto return, there's some kind of restructure. Like I think there was a Pluto return when they started allowing queens, or when they started allowing those sorts of things. But yeah. So yeah, try not to make this into a whole episode about now, but
I won't lie. This does, there is I mean, I'm laughing about it. It's really not funny, but there is a, I do have a concern, without being fear mongery. I do have a concern about this, especially also because at this time, when Uranus enters Gemini, we'll also have Neptune in Aries again.
It's definitely concerning, especially with the country being so divided as it is.
Yeah.
It's not like, hey, everything's going fine. It's there's problems, and definitely concerning. In this chart, it's interesting that Venus in Aries, that's in a detriment, is now exactly opposing Saturn in the US's chart.
Yep.
In the fourth house of, where we find endings and home and if I don't know how many mundane astrologers there were in the US around this time, but I'm assuming not many. That would have been an interesting thing to see at the beginning of a war like this. That would have been probably pretty concerning.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is another indication that this is going to be a thing. This isn't a one time. This is
going to be a thing.
A long, drawn out war. Yeah.
And the nodes, we're also squaring that Saturn. Saturn in the US chart, Venus in the event.
So those nodes are squaring. It's the transit nodes are squaring US's Chiron too.
Yes, they are.
These are some deep wounds.
Yeah. And the value thing is being brought to the forefront with that transit Venus in the outside chart squaring. It's like it's bringing value shit. Selfish values. That's where my mind goes first when in this particular, not in general with Venus and Aries, but in this chart it feels like.
I could see that for sure. All that Pisces here, hitting the third house. We have the Neptune at 29 degrees. We have Mercury in the fall in Pisces, all hitting that third house on the US's chart. In a way, it screams misunderstandings.
Yes, misunderstandings or
what it reminds me of? Sorry, I'm gonna do this on your channel. It kind of reminds me of now, where if you poll most Americans, they don't agree with what's happening to abortion laws. They don't agree with, or they agree that they need gun control. Yet the way voting is structured, it's like it's interpreted like the masses agree with what's happening with the laws and stuff, but really they don't. If you poll individual Americans, it's like, no, actually most don't agree. I almost wonder if that's what's going on with this at this time, where most people don't agree with slavery.
Could be. It very well could be. It very well could be. It's but it's somehow clouded over to make it seem like they do.
Exactly.
No, I could see that. I could see that. I could see that. Or it's like they're not even like with that falling in the third house and the third house being intercepted in this, using using Placidus in the US's chart before the US's chart. It's almost like with Aquarius on the cusp of that third house, it's almost like they're not, maybe if something like that, they're not asking locally enough. I don't know how to word what I want. Like they're going too far out.
Yeah. It's like a national issue versus within the home, within the neighborhood, within the community.
Yeah, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'd also like to point out that I didn't point out in the other chart that the first time we looked at that chart of the of when the battle started, that midheaven is conjunct the galactic center.
Oh,
back then, I think the GC would have been, I don't know exactly what it would have been, maybe 20, low 26s, high 25s. I could be wrong about that in 1860, but it does stand out. Like there's a lot of energy at this event.
Yeah,
a whole lot.
It's fueling like a
yeah.
It's interesting too that Mars Uranus partnership that's going on, hitting also the sixth house of the US, another area of service, slavery, somewhat day-to-day responsibilities. I don't know, people can argue that the Civil War wasn't about slavery mostly. I've heard those arguments. Everything on these charts scream it is.
I know that there are a lot of other ideas as to why the Civil War happened, and whatever, there might be other reasons, but look, this is a reason why. Come on, I mean,
astrology saying this is a big reason.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about this, or
I guess the whole Pluto moon, I can't stop looking at that hitting the fifth house of the US, an area of expression. I don't know what I want to say about that, but
could it make it more what's the word, like almost like amplified?
This is a house where that's traditionally ruled by the sun, so there could be ego here. Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I feel like we in this country, we need to get our shit together. We do. We need, I feel like, I don't really know how we do that.
I don't know how I say to do that without getting you canceled on your channel. I'm going to just kind of sit back, but
yeah. Well, and you could say, I mean, I'm not going to censor you. You can say whatever you want, but all I'm going to say is that there are so many, we are so fucking divided, and we just need to get our fucking shit together.
yeah, there's a lot of things. Yeah.
Learn how to be respectful of other people, of differences. I'll stop there because I could go on and on. I really could.
I get it. It's like, I was born in the 70s. I remember when like the biggest issue was that they're getting ready to have a president who had been divorced. Like, man, things have changed,
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, we gotta, I don't know what the answer is. But we got some major transits coming to the US to start, and it feels like a fuse is getting ready to get lit, or it's in the process,
It really does. And another thing I feel called to say is
say it. Let's do it. It's Mercury retrograde.
I know people have fought me about this before on this channel, left me comments. I'm done being nice. I'm done being, just be fucking kind to one another. You know what I mean? I'm done being nice. Blah 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 blah. Okay, well then you're part of the fucking problem. Like we all just need to be like I don't know. Obviously, stand for what you believe in. I'm certainly not saying that, but I think we can all. Yeah. I'll stop.
Good PSA. I approve.
All right. Well, Brandy, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at brandyburrowastrology.com and Brandy Burrow Astrology on YouTube and Instagram. And Ellie, just remind everyone, I know they can find you here on your channel. Where else can they find you?
You can find me at saturnseason.com and on Instagram at saturnseasonastrology. And thank you so much for wanting to do this. Again, go check out the video on the insurrection on Brandy's channel. You'll find the link below. She just said where she is, but I'll put the link below. And everyone else, I'll see y'all later.